Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3 for this news report today. Alright, we're leaving off with the police state, and we talked about New York in that last video. A manhunt launched for a man in ski mask carrying an assault rifle. Turns out to be a man in a turtleneck holding an umbrella, followed by a Pennsylvania sheriff threatening a reporter. Threatened to cut off the hands of a political campaign worker and pulled out a gun, threatened to shoot the newspaper reporter. Troopers indicted after roadside cavity search of 2 women. You hear this a lot. So CBS learned 2 state troopers involved in controversial roadside cavity search of 2 North Texas women have been indicted on criminal charges by the Dallas County jury. So as I've seen on the dash cam video, searching the body cavities front and back of the women along the exit ramp of Bush Turnpike in Irving last summer. The woman also said her prescription bottle of the painkiller hydrocodone was missing after the search. Mississippi State Representative Jessica Upshaw found dead. Says Simpson County coroner says their representative has died. So says I guess the Bureau of Investigation, basically the FBI, says the crime scene unit is at a home in Mendenhall investigating her death. They said they wouldn't comment about the cause. Does not appear to be natural death. Died from a single gunshot wound to the head. In liberal Vermont, a secessionist movement rises. So unlikely coalition has a voice in state politics. It's not only Texans. A small dedicated band of Vermont activists also want to secede from the Union. Railing at the effects of big business and bureaucracy on daily life, they speak at the state legislature to get bills introduced. Says though none so far have won. Yeah, it's interesting because they had to put that thing liberal Vermont. Well, it has nothing to do with whether you're liberal or conservative. You have the right to secede from the Union. And you'll see how democratic and how much the federal government adheres to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, because see, if you try to do that, they'll reign the holy empire on you if you try to do that and exercise your rights. Left or right, says the leader, who wants to be associated with such a shabby creature as the United States. The systematic crushing of young nonconformists and anti-authoritarians. So this is an op-ed, but it says here to be a hero you have to, in his talk, The Psychology of Evil, this Philip Zimbardo says you have to learn to be a deviant to be a hero, because you're always going up against conformity of the group. That's true. And it says they would agree that the heroism requires a battle for liberty and justice in the face of tyranny, and injustice requires a special kind of deviancy and nonconformity. They call it, I guess Martin Luther King called it creative maladjustment. It says here, anti-authoritarians question all authority and challenge and resist illegitimate authority. Americans should be concerned how our institutions are crushing young anti-authoritarians and preventing the rise of heroes. He said he wants to promote the heroic imagination in our children through our educational system with hero courses that he is developing, believing our young anti-authoritarians or potential heroes have far less of a need for hero courses in their schools than a need for help in battling against the systematic authoritarian aspect of their schools. It's interesting because we covered this just recently about the Reagan era, basically Reagan era Department of Education worker. She worked for the federal government, and she used to talk about how she was there to weed out the leaders, the ones that question things, and that's what it's all about, and dumbing them down. George Orwell concluded that nothing crushes anti-authoritarianism and heroism more than overwhelming fear. The education system has created fear with its No Child Left Behind, race to the stop, and standardized testing tyranny. They create fear in both students and teachers, who are forced to focus on the demands of test creators and the policymakers, which are really like sociologists and eugenicists. It says here, young people have also been frightened by repeatedly hearing that they will be losers if they do not attend college, while at the same time college attendees are saddled with crushing student loan debt that can keep them from bucking a system for fear of finding themselves in a deeper financial hole. Says they're also being referred to mental health professionals for treatment, the nonconformists and anti-authoritarians. That's right. They've actually diagnosed it oppositional defiant disorder or anti-authoritarian disorder. Often actively defies or refuses to comply with adult requests or rules. Often argues with adults. Yeah, so they could just put pump them full of drugs. White Student Union announces night patrols on Maryland College campus. Says white people exist They have the right to exist. They have the right to exist as white people be white. Come to the first meeting of the White Student Union featuring Speaker Jared Taylor. It says here, in a move likely to spark outcry, a student group calling itself White Student Union at Maryland's Towson University intends to enact nighttime patrols throughout the county campus in Baltimore. While student patrols after hours chaperones are not unheard of at American universities, the fact that the plan has been announced by what is already an infamous whites-only group is certain to not sit well in a city like Baltimore, which boasts a 60% African-American population. The White Student Union president, Mr. Heimbach, it says here, informed the students' paper that the group's patrols would be concerned with on-campus safety walks, and members would be equipped with flashlights. They said none of the patrols would be carrying weapons, and female participants will carry pepper spray and be enrolled in self-defense classes. Says the website states that its mission is to create an avenue for people to participate in political, cultural, and educational and social events to celebrate European heritage. During the fall semester, the Heimbach, the leader or whatever, rented a school meeting room for a lecture he was hosting, How Diversity is Not Strength, with Speaker Jared Taylor, president of New Century Foundation. Says an advocate of racial realism, says a pseudo-scientific system of racial classification advocates segregation. Someone says that, face it, America is a racist country. Like we said, it's tribalism, and yeah, there's some bigots and stuff like that, but you're not necessarily a racist because you want to preserve your, your heritage or your people. And but if you're white, you'll be considered racist. If you're Asian, if you're black, then you're an activist, right? So, and I'm not joking around. This is serious. I mean, you go to other Black Student Union. They can get away with that, right? In universities. The Mexican American Student Confederation, they can get away with that in universities. Asian American Student Union, Strength Through Unity, see? But they're not racist, only if whites do it. But there's no way of saying that without coming out as a racist, because it's not politically correct. So, Cyprus up to 40% theft from bank accounts. Says here that this individual says, I would like to emphasize that none of these measures will affect deposits below 100,000 pounds or euros, Confirmation details are not cut. BBC is going with the following right now. Eurozone banking finance ministers have agreed on a deal for a bailout for Cyprus to prevent its banking system collapsing. They suggest a deal will include a levy on deposits of more than 100,000 euros in Cyprus's two biggest banks. Levy on accounts in Lakai Bank, the country's second biggest, could be as high as 40%. They said that if they raise 5.8 billion euros to qualify, that's what's needed for this 10 billion euro EU bailout and avoid bankruptcy. Banks in Cyprus are to remain closed until Thursday, says the central bank. The finance minister has ordered all of the country's banks to remain closed until Thursday, the country's central bank announced. Just hours before the announcement, late Monday, the central bank said all but two of the country's largest banks would open on Tuesday morning. It could be a sign that the country's banks are even lower on cash than they believed at the end of last week. A bad bank is to be created to deal with uninsured deposits and the lender's badly performing loans. They're saying it's official. Banks in Europe may now seize deposits to cover their gambling losses. As expected, Cyprus and the EU reached a new late-night bailout deal last night that will reduce the chances that Cyprus's financial system and economy will completely implode. So deposits under 100,000 euros will be protected. So it says now small depositors in European banks can breathe more easily, but deposits over 100,000 euros will be seized and subjected to an as yet undetermined haircut, with the confiscated money going to the bailout, the gambling losses, the aforementioned reckless idiots who run some of Cyprus's banks. And I'm sure you guys remember me titling one of my videos about this, it's all about Russia's gas. EU, the European Union, caught playing dirty, and it's all about Russian gas. Says that's all it's ever been about, oil and gas. There's a lot going on this week, but it's all being overshadowed by the fascinating geopolitical game over Cyprus. This is a stage on which a country's pending financial collapse hinges explicitly on its hydrocarbons potential, and whoever turns up with aid will win access to exploration blocks. Says here it took us through the nuances of this game, knowing that Russia could bail out Cyprus in return for a nice chunk of exploration acreage offshore. But by the close of the day, that's exactly how things appeared to be unfolding. But on Friday, Russian and Greek officials had said no deal had been reached. They say the EU would never have done this in the past because Russia would have just turned off the gas spigots that control European supplies. But it says it's the 122 trillion cubic feet of Mediterranean gas in the Levant or Leviathan Basin discovered by Israel in a partnership, U.S.-Israeli partnership, and in Lebanon, Syria, and Cyprus. If all goes well, it'll be pumped via undersea pipeline directly to Turkey and then on to Europe. And of course, you have Qatar, and they're the ones that want to do what? They want to pump it through Syria. That's why they're funding most of the terrorists and mercenaries in Syria. So they say this is Europe's answer to the Russian gas stranglehold. It's no longer afraid of Russia turning off the spigot. It says here the Mediterranean gas could provide 40% of Europe's total gas needs. Cyprus bailout deal tantamount to theft, says Medvedev, so maybe this is what they're going to say no matter what. It says the stealing of what has already been stolen continues, says Russian Prime Minister. He's referring to this recent deal of mainly the lenders of the European Central Bank, the IMF, and the European Union. He said the agreement will save Cyprus from bankruptcy at the cost of forcing heavy losses for uninsured depositors on many bank deposits. Russian citizens hold as much as 20 billion euros. So, like we said, 40% of those deposits will be taxed on people that have over 100,000 euros in the two biggest banks. So, troubled Cyprus prompts Medvedev to create Russia's own offshore zone. While some Russian businesses are feeling the pinch in Cyprus, Prime Minister Medvedev has voiced the idea of offshore zones in Russia at a regular meeting of the government. Says if there's so much fuss going on, why should we think of creating a kind of zone of our own in the Far East? We have a bunch of good places there, and he's talking about the turmoil in Cyprus. He says he called for a budget that is unprecedentedly big, more than $323 billion, mostly spent on transport infrastructure in the two remote regions. The U.S. Senate passes a $3.7 trillion budget. It's the first budget passed in 4 years. It was passed 50 to 49, and it includes passage of tax increases and trimming spending. Senate approves internet sales tax by 3-to-1 margin. The Senate voted yesterday to approve the concept of an internet sales tax by an overwhelmingly 75 to 24 margin. It was symbolic and mostly non-binding, but it has support for some to bypass the committee process. They call it the Marketplace Fairness Act. Okay, and then we have America split in two, 5 ugly extremes of inequality. It says start off with the Koch brothers as an example. Their investments grew by $6 billion in 1 year, which is $3 million per hour based on a 40-hour work week. It says some of the money is used to try to kill renewable energy standards around the country. Their income portrays in a society measured by economic status as a million times more valuable than the restaurant server who cheers up our lunch hours while hoping to make enough in tips to pay the bills. It says a comparison with large corporations for CEOs and minimum wage workers, the difference is $5,000 per hour versus $7.25 per hour. A single top income could buy housing for every homeless person in the United States. And it says the poorest 40% of Americans have no wealth, saying that in 1983 the poorest 47% have $15,000 per family. That's 2.5% of the nation's wealth. Now 40% of America owned 0% of the nation's wealth, and that their debt exceeded their assets. The 400 wealthiest Americans owned as much as 80 million families, 62% of America. Says because of the stock market, the American GDP has doubled. It says the stock market has increased by over 10 times, and the richest quintile of Americans owns 93% of it. Swedish hotel lets you pay to be homeless. They sleep in the cold for $15 a night. They're offering visitors a unique hotel experience. They could spend a night as a homeless person for $15, including one sleeping bag in a park, a dirty mattress under a bridge, or the floor of a vacant paper mill. Sprawling and struggling poverty hits American suburbs. As a single mother, has made it hard to hold on to the suburban life that is, in her mind, key to making sure her daughter gets off to a right start. And that's like my friend said, they always hear that, I want my child to have a better life. And the truth is that they're not, unless they sell their souls. Vice President Joe Biden runs up a bill of $588,000 for just one night and a 5-star Paris hotel, and taxpayers will pick up the tab. And a farmer who's concerned about poverty and hungry posted some political signs that groups are trying to take down: Marxism, socialism, poverty, and hunger. This is GGN. Thank you.